a $100 million stealth jet, an enemy pilot who probably never even saw it coming. A kill shot fired over the capital city of Iran, the country that spent 25 years swearing it would destroy Israel. That moment happened. It was real. And it changed everything we thought we knew about modern air combat. But here's the thing. Nobody is telling you. The story of the F-35 in this war isn't just about one dogfight over Tehran. It's about a 25-year gamble that finally paid off, or, depending on who you ask, a gamble that may have opened a door that can never be closed again. Let's go back to the beginning. For decades, military analysts argued about whether the F-35 was actually worth it. The cost overruns were legendary. The program ballooned to over $400 billion total, making it the most expensive weapons program in human history. Critics said it was too slow, too expensive, too fragile, a flying Swiss Army knife that did everything adequately and nothing brilliantly. Pilots who flew older jets, the F-16, the F-15, sometimes complained it felt like trading a sports car for a sedan packed with computers. But the people who built it, and the people who flew it in secret, believed something different. They believed the F-35 wasn't a fighter jet in the traditional sense. It was a flying sensor, a computer with wings, a machine designed not to outfly its enemies, but to outthink them, to see everything, know everything, and strike before anyone even realized it was there. Here's where it gets strange. The first real test of that theory didn't happen in a training exercise. It happened on the night of February 28, 2026, when Israel and the United States launched a strike so sudden, so overwhelming, and so precisely timed that it killed Iran's supreme leader Ali Khamenei within the first hour. Not after days of bombardment, not after weeks of warnings, within the first hour. The initial stage of the campaign prioritized degrading Iranian air defenses, reportedly striking roughly 200 systems. And the strikes enabled the U.S. and Israel to establish effective control of the airspace from western Iran to central Tehran within 24 hours. ACLED. Think about what that means. 24 hours, one day, to establish air dominance over a country the size of Western Europe, with Russian-supplied S-300 missile systems, layered radar networks, and decades of preparation for exactly this kind of attack. Standard logic says that's impossible. Reality said otherwise. And the F-35 was the tip of the spear. Israeli-piloted F-35s flew nearly 1,000 miles to strike targets inside Iran. All of the fighters made it home. Iran made no claims of downing a single F-35. It didn't even attempt to suggest otherwise. The national interest. That last part is extraordinary. Iran's propaganda machine is usually loud. They claim victories constantly. During the 2025 12-day war, Iran claimed it had shot down 2 Israeli F-35 fighter jets. Claims its own military later admitted were false. Wikipedia. So when Iran stays quiet about something, that silence means more than any press release. But the part that should make every Air Force in the world sit down and take notes came 6 days into the war. March 4, 2026. An Israeli F-35I, the Adir, which means mighty one in Hebrew, was flying a strike mission over Tehran. Not above Iranian territory. Over the actual capital city, inside one of the most heavily defended airspaces on the planet. An Iranian aircraft appeared, a Yak-130, a Russian-built light combat jet. The Iranian pilot, whatever his orders were, moved toward the F-35. He never got a second move. The Israeli F-35I shot down the Iranian Yak-130 over Tehran, the first ever downing of a manned aircraft by an F-35 anywhere in the world. It was also the first time the Israeli Air Force engaged in air-to-air combat with manned aircraft in 40 years. The times of Israel. The last time. 1985. Over Lebanon. That's how long it had been since an Israeli pilot looked across the sky at a human being in another cockpit and pulled the trigger. And when it finally happened again, it happened over the enemy's capital city, inside their airspace, in the middle of a strike package, with a jet that wasn't even supposed to be a dogfighter. The F-35I may have been operating in stealth mode, meaning the Yak-130's pilot may not have even known he was being targeted. The national interest. Let that land for a moment. You're in your cockpit. You're over your own city. You think you're hunting. And somewhere behind you, or above you, or below you, in a direction you can't see, a missile is already in the air. Now here's the counterintuitive part that most coverage completely misses. The F-35's kill wasn't the impressive part. Beating a Yak-130 in a straight fight isn't a headline. The Yak is a trainer converted into a light attack aircraft. It's subsonic. It was built to teach pilots how to fly, not to fight stealth jets. Around 200 Yak-130s have been produced, with most manufactured in Russia. It has been exported as a low-cost light combat fighter to Algeria, Bangladesh, Belarus, Iran, Laos, Myanmar, and Vietnam. The national interest. That's the customer list. It's not exactly a frontline threat. What was impressive was everything surrounding that kill. The F-35 was in the middle of a strike mission when the engagement happened. It wasn't on a dedicated air patrol. It wasn't cleared of all other tasks, circling at altitude looking for threats. It was actively bombing things, and still had the situational awareness to identify, engage, and destroy an aircraft trying to interfere, then presumably continue its mission. The airbase commander described the pilot as relatively junior in the force, and said it was not his first flight in Iran. The Times of Israel. Not his first flight in Iran. A junior pilot had already flown combat missions over Iranian territory before this moment. The level of operational tempo the Israeli Air Force was maintaining is almost hard to process. But here's where the story gets complicated, and where most people change the channel. On 28 February 2026, the US and Israel launched a surprise attack during nuclear negotiations, killing Khamenei and other Iranian officials, along with civilians. Subsequent attacks damaged military bases, government facilities, schools, hospitals, and cultural heritage sites. Wikipedia. This wasn't a surgical strike on a single nuclear site. This was a war, a full one, with hundreds of strikes across 26 of Iran's 31 provinces. A.C.L.E.D. recorded hundreds of strikes, including significant concentrations in central, western, and southern Iran, with Tehran as the most heavily targeted location. A.C.L.E.D. And Iran hit back. Iran launched hundreds of drones and ballistic missiles at targets in Israel and at United States military bases in Bahrain, Jordan, Kuwait, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates. A drone struck Britain's Akrotiri military base on Cyprus. Missiles were shot down over Turkey. The war didn't stay in one place. It spread. Fast. Like a fire jumping between buildings, each new strike creating justification for the next, each retaliation expanding the geography of the conflict. 3 United States F-15 fighter jets were mistakenly shot down by Kuwaiti air defenses, all 6 crew members ejected safely. A KC-135 Stratotanker refueling aircraft crashed in western Iraq, killing all 6 crew members aboard. Friendly fire. Accidents. The chaos of a real war filling in the gaps between the clean surgical strikes the press releases describe. And then, on March 19th, something happened that no one had seen before. A United States F-35 fighter jet made an emergency landing at a United States air base in the Middle East after being struck by what is believed to be Iranian fire. The first time Iran had hit a United States aircraft in the war. The pilot was reportedly in stable condition, but suffered shrapnel wounds. CENTCOM confirmed the emergency landing, while an NPR correspondent reported the aircraft made a hard landing and would be out of service for a long period. Iranian officials called it a victory. The IRGC claimed it had seriously damaged the F-35 over central Iran. And here's the brutal honesty of modern warfare. Both sides were right. The F-35 flew home. That's an American win. The most sophisticated stealth jet ever built absorbed a hit deep inside Iranian airspace and still landed safely. That is a remarkable demonstration of the aircraft's resilience. But Iran hid it. After 25 years of being told their air defenses were obsolete, after analysts spent decades explaining that Russian-supplied systems couldn't touch fifth-generation stealth, something Iranian reached out across the sky and drew blood from an F-35. A Ukrainian news agency said the IRGC's ROD air defense system could have hit the aircraft, while Chinese analysts told the South China Morning Post that the damage was likely caused by an adapted air-to-air missile rather than a larger SAM. So maybe it wasn't a sophisticated surface-to-air missile that did it. Maybe it was something smaller, something improvised. But improvised worked. That's the lesson everyone in Beijing and Moscow just wrote down in bold. Now step back even further, because there's a bigger question underneath all of this, and it doesn't have a comfortable answer. Despite the unprecedented intensity of the military campaign, full capitulation, encompassing the abandonment of Iran's nuclear and missile programs and its anti-United States posture, remains unlikely, even after the killing of Khamenei. Hardline elements within the IRGC are likely dominating decision-making. Washington may be banking on rapid internal fracture or large-scale defections, yet there is little evidence of this so far within a deeply institutionalized, entrenched, and ideological system. Which means the F-35 did everything it was designed to do. It penetrated defended airspace. It destroyed targets. It shot down enemy aircraft. It survived a hit and came home. By every technical measure, the aircraft performed, and yet, the strategic goal it was sent to achieve may still be out of reach. That's the paradox at the heart of modern air power. You can have the most advanced, most expensive, most capable aircraft ever built. You can fly it over the enemy's capital. You can dominate the sky so completely that the other side's air force barely appears. And it still might not be enough. Not because the weapon failed, but because the problem was never really a military one. For 25 years, Iran built parallel systems, underground nuclear facilities, dispersed missile launchers, distributed command structures. It built a military designed to survive the attack everyone knew was eventually coming. Absent the collapse of the regime itself, any surviving leadership will, once hostilities subside, move to rebuild what it perceives as essential deterrent capabilities. The only clear path to a decisive victory would be regime change, a far longer, costlier, and more destabilizing undertaking than a limited air campaign is likely to achieve. So here's the question that should keep strategists awake at night. If the most dominant air campaign since the Gulf War, with stealth bombers, F-35s, carrier strike groups, and the full weight of American and Israeli military power, can establish air supremacy over Tehran in 24 hours and still not guarantee strategic victory, what exactly can air power accomplish? And what happens the next time a country that doesn't have a $400 billion jet program tries to fight back against one that does? The Iranian pilot over Tehran probably never saw the missile coming. But somewhere in that story, in the gap between a technically perfect kill and an outcome still deeply uncertain, is the real lesson of this war. The F-35 proved it can dominate the sky. The harder question is what happens on the ground afterward. And that question doesn't have a clean answer. Not yet. If this breakdown gave you something to think about, something you won't hear in a 90-second news segment, share it with someone who needs the full picture. The real story is always more complicated than the headline, and that's exactly why it matters.